The environment in which we are organizing, whether it's as worker centers or as unions, is dramatically changing and not in our favor. The workforce itself is changing as well, and so the traditional institutions which represent workforces, unions, have not necessarily changed to reflect the changing workforce. The reality of it is that worker centers in and of themselves don't have enough power, as we've heard from the earlier panel, to really negotiate for large sectors of workers. The new reality has required us to think about new ways and new strategic partnerships that will allow us to organize and represent low-wage workers in a way that does them justice.
Well, I'd like to say it was our brilliant strategic thinking that led us to where we are today. I think the reality is, like most things, we stumbled upon it when 8 women workers from a kind of retail shop along Knickerbocker Avenue, the main commercial strip in Bushwick, came to our office complaining of exploitation at a shop called Minimax. We did start working on their case. We wrote a demand letter. We approached the employer. He was not flexible and not receptive, and we launched a community boycott. What we quickly learned was it was much easier to target a retail establishment than a factory, because they need members of our community to go in and spend their money to make their money. And what we found was that folks in the community were very receptive. The workforce and the kind of shoppers were the same people and often came from the same families. And so when a friend of mine who had done work with United Farm Workers came out and went to the boycott, he said, this is unbelievable. You're turning away 1 out of every 4 people, and we'd been feeling so discouraged by that. He said, you should be able to put almost any business out of business if you can turn away 1 in 10 people. So we suddenly were feeling like, this is interesting. This is a kind of power that is unusual. So at that point in time, we started exploring the city for partners, and that's when, kind of fortuitously, we found Jeff and the RWDSU, who said, we're really interested in trying to organize shops that many unions have not focused on in the past, but we know that we're only going to be able to do it if we've got some local credibility, a headquarters right in the community, and we could kind of share the cost of doing the work. We spent a lot of time internally talking about, well, what does the partnership need to look like? And we said, all right, we don't want to just integrate folks into a local that they're going to have no control over. The RWDSU said, we're also interested in creating a new local for the workers who get organized through this partnership to be in and to run themselves. We said we are interested in not just organizing the workers into unions to defend their workplace rights, but also into our organization so that they can stay involved in community issues and larger public policy issues like comprehensive immigration reform that they face outside of the workplace every day. Again, the RW was very supportive and kind of shared our vision. So at that point, we started working together, and so what we kind of decided, all right, we're gonna announce our presence by targeting a bad employer and see if that scares up some interest among other employers. When we were able to win about $30,000 in back wages for the workers at this greengrocer, which was exciting, and we kind of announced it didn't really scare up much interest on the part of the employers to sit down and make real concessions. So then we at that point were thinking kind of about our strategy and evolved a strategy where we would approach an employer who is violating labor law and say, we are going to file a legal complaint against you for your non-payment of wages, and we're going to launch a community boycott of your store unless you sign something called the Good Business Community Agreement, and you all have a copy of that. And essentially, it's a neutrality agreement which would enable the union to get in there and talk to workers free of retaliation from their bosses and, kind of make a pitch about, given that their goals are to increase their wages and to get health insurance, this would be a sensible option for them.
But what's unique about the Good Community Business Agreement is that it's a neutrality agreement presented by the community, not by a union. And it actually puts the employer under the governance of a community, because all the provisions are enforced by the Bushwick Labor Board, headed by a priest appointed by the community group. Now, we didn't know if this was ever going to work, but we were pulling, the whole idea out of this is to pull it out of the National Labor Relations Board. The employers know how to work the board.
Right.
We want to put it in a venue which they don't know, which they're confused by, and we go through the negotiations at this, where we were successful. There was a lot of confusion on the employer's part that worked really well to our advantage. And then, we did a report, The Street of Shame, which you all folks have, which really depicts the conditions on Knickerbocker Avenue, and we looked to target one of the worst stores, which was a 99-cent store, which we didn't know if we would unionize it, but we would make it as the example of the strip.
Well, and so this was, again, one of the dangers of going into uncharted waters is that we didn't know what was going to happen, and so we launched a community boycott of this 99-cent store called Superstar 99, and they, the next day, went out of business. They closed. And so our desire, kind of to make an example of them, suddenly it was a bad example. It was like, is the profit margin so thin for these businesses that they can't sustain paying their workers decent wages? And so, we were scrambling, but again, one of the advantages from the community side of working with the union is that they have a research department. So we had some information on the guy, and we knew that, appearances notwithstanding, he had plenty of money. So we kept up, we stayed in front of the store, and within, I think, 2 weeks, they reopened. They paid $75-something thousand in back wages, and they rehired all of the workers.
So as a result, it becomes a victory on the strip. When we had that press conference in front of the store, reopening it, you could feel the vibrations on the strip. People recognized that something had happened.
Jeff, I think, will talk now about kind of what motivated the partnership from the union side. And, as Gordy mentioned, it's challenging terrain that we're on. And unions work differently and have different strengths than community organizations and worker centers do. But we're both bringing something to the table. But so I think Jeff will also talk about some of the tensions and challenges just about holding the coalition together.
This is, at times, a difficult relationship. It's not easy. Andrew, I met Andrew and we talked a little bit and said, this would be a great idea, let's do it. I don't think we really clearly thought through all the problems that we would encounter. You have to understand the different cultures and political situations within another organization. So, unions often, when you want to do something, you tell your folks, your staff, let's go do it, right? You got to go to this demonstration. Well, you can't do that. Community group, you can't just say, let's go out and boycott. You have to ensure that there's a buy-in. It's a very democratic process. And perhaps a little slower, but you have to be willing to accept that. And the union has to be humble. It can't be the all-powerful organization. When we won Footgo, when the contract was won, through our activities and efforts, it was, well, it's a union local, we should have the press conference at the union office, right? That's the appropriate place to have it. Well, it really wasn't the appropriate place to have it. The appropriate place was really to have it in the community. That's where the victory was really won. It's where a lot of the power was demonstrated. This idea of organizing is really going up a ladder in a lot of ways. It's getting retail workers to recognize that they can change the retail situation, their working situation. Retail work, you talk to retail workers or people who've been in retail, says it's a retail job. It's expected to be low wage, it's expected to have no benefits, and you have to really change that. And one way to start changing that is to recognize that it's possible to create a different situation.